Okay, so you know how it is, you're going through life setting goals, pushing yourself, and it's like almost guaranteed, right? You're going to hit a wall at some point.
Yeah.
You're going to face a setback, a disappointment, something that just feels like a flat out failure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a universal experience, right? It doesn't matter what your background is or what kind of goals you're chasing. Nobody's immune.
Absolutely.
I mean, from the smallest personal goals, like finally cleaning out that junk drawer we all have,
Oh, yeah.
to like those huge career aspirations we've been working towards forever.
It's woven into the fabric of learning and growth, really.
That's so true.
I think we often kind of think of failure as this like negative endpoint.
Yeah, we do.
But the reality is it's more like a signpost along the way.
A signpost.
Yeah, like a redirection.
I like that. And that's exactly what we want to kind of dive into today in this deep dive.
Right.
What if those moments, those stumbles weren't reasons to just completely throw in the towel?
Yeah.
What if they actually held like the key to unlocking future success? So we're going to explore why encountering failure is not just likely, but actually essential.
Essential.
And we'll look at how we can shift our perspective on these setbacks. And we'll really get into some practical strategies for taking those experiences and using them to propel ourselves forward.
Okay.
The aim here is that you'll start to see failure not as this final judgment, but as a really valuable, albeit sometimes painful teacher.
It's like recalibrating your internal compass.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Based on the terrain you just navigated.
Okay, yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I can actually think of a time early on in my career, I was probably fresh out of university,
Mm-hmm.
and I applied for this job that I was absolutely convinced was perfect for me.
Yeah.
Like, I was tailor-made for this position.
Okay.
I remember spending hours tailoring my application, prepping for the interview like the whole 9 yards.
I've been there.
And I even walked out of the interview feeling pretty optimistic.
Yeah.
And then a week or so later, I got that standard rejection email, the kind that's like polite, but utterly impersonal.
Uh-huh.
And it just felt like a punch to the gut, honestly.
It is.
And I immediately started questioning everything.
Yeah.
My skills, my qualifications, my entire career path.
It makes you question everything, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's really easy to internalize rejection as a personal failing,
Yeah.
like a judgment on your worth.
That's exactly it. And it took a while, honestly. But eventually I kind of started to think, okay, instead of just wallowing in self-pity, what can I actually take away from this?
Right?
So I started dissecting the job description,
Oh, interesting.
replaying the interview in my head, trying to identify any areas where I might have fallen short.
You really analyzed it.
I did, and it wasn't easy, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But that process of reflection actually led me to focus on developing specific skills that I hadn't even considered before.
Right.
And you know what? The next opportunity that came along was even better suited to my strengths. That rejection, that initial feeling of failure really did turn out to be the start of something much more positive.
That's great.
So let's dig into this idea of failure being a necessary part of growth.
Okay.
Because I think for many of us, the instinct is still to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely. That aversion to failure is totally understandable.
Right.
I mean, we're often socialized to view it as this like negative reflection on our abilities.
We are.
But if you look at like any area of mastery,
Yeah.
you'll see a trail of attempts and adjustments along the way.
I see what you're saying.
It's like consider learning a musical instrument.
Yeah.
You don't just pick it up and play perfectly right.
No.
There are missed notes, awkward fingerings, rhythms that are just off.
Totally.
But each of those little failures provides immediate feedback that helps you refine your technique and ultimately improve.
Right. So every wrong note gets you a little closer to the right one.
Exactly.
It's almost like those mistakes are providing the data you need to succeed.
Precisely. And that data is invaluable. Yeah, think about a scientist conducting experiments.
Okay.
Not every experiment yields the desired result.
Yeah.
In fact, often the most significant breakthroughs come from experiments that didn't go as planned.
Interesting.
The failure to achieve that initial hypothesis
Yeah.
leads to new questions,
Yeah.
new avenues of investigation, and ultimately new discoveries.
So the unexpected result becomes the catalyst for deeper understanding.
Exactly. It's like turning the unexpected into something valuable.
Yeah. And it's not just in personal development or science either.
Right.
Think about someone like Michael Jordan.
Okay.
I mean, we all know him as this incredible basketball icon.
Yeah.
But he himself has been really vocal about the sheer number of shots he's missed, the games he's lost.
Yeah.
He famously said something like, "I failed over and over and over again in my life.
Yeah. I've heard that quote.
And that is why I succeed."
Wow.
It's almost counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
This like legendary figure attributing his success to his failures.
What's particularly insightful about Jordan's perspective is that he reframes failure,
Yeah,
not as this definitive outcome,
right.
but as a necessary step towards success.
I see.
It suggests that each missed shot, each lost game, provided him with crucial information about what didn't work,
Yeah.
allowing him to adapt, refine his approach, and ultimately achieve that extraordinary level of performance.
So this cycle of making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and then improving,
Yeah,
that's really the engine that drives us forward.
exactly.
Failure isn't this roadblock that stops us. It's more like a course correction.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're starting to understand how failure can be a part of the process,
Right.
but how do we actually shift our mindset so that we can see it that way, rather than just feeling defeated?
Yeah, this brings us to the work of psychologist Carol Dweck
Okay,
and her research on fixed versus growth mindsets.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, in a nutshell, a fixed mindset is the belief that our abilities and intelligence are largely static traits. Yeah, like you either have them or you don't.
Right.
People with a fixed mindset tend to avoid challenges because they fear exposing their perceived limitations.
Yeah.
And they often see failure as direct evidence of their inadequacy.
It's that feeling of, oh, I'm just not good at this.
Yeah.
And then avoiding it altogether to protect your ego.
Exactly. Now, a growth mindset operates on a fundamentally different belief
Okay.
that our abilities can be developed and improved through dedication, effort, and learning from our experiences, including our mistakes.
So failing is part of that.
It is individuals with a growth mindset embrace challenges,
Interesting.
seeing them as opportunities to learn and grow. And crucially, they view failure not as a reflection of their inherent worth,
Right.
but as valuable feedback that informs their future efforts.
So if you have a growth mindset, when you encounter a setback, your internal dialogue is different.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm a failure,
Right.
but more like, okay, that didn't work. What can I learn from this, and how can I approach it differently next time?
Precisely. It shifts the focus from a judgment about who you are
Yeah.
to an analysis of what happened and how you can improve.
Okay.
This allows for a much more constructive and proactive response to setbacks.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling paralyzed by failure, you're empowered to take action and continue learning.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
So what are some tangible things we can do
Okay.
to start cultivating this growth mindset when we inevitably face those moments of failure?
One key strategy is to actively reframe your thoughts. Reframe your thoughts.
Yeah, when you experience a setback, try to catch yourself. If you start thinking in terms of blame or inherent limitations,
I see.
instead consciously ask yourself questions like, what specific lessons can I extract from this situation?
Okay.
Or what alternative strategies could I explore?
So you're redirecting your mental energy
Exactly.
towards problem solving and learning.
Yes.
Rather than dwelling on negative self-assessments.
Right.
It's about intentionally choosing a more constructive internal conversation.
Instead of getting stuck in the why me spiral, you're actively seeking the how can I improve path.
That's a great way to put it. And another important aspect is to focus on the process.
The process.
Yeah, rather than just the outcome.
Right.
Celebrate the effort you put and the strategies you tried and the progress you made, regardless of whether you achieved the desired result.
So acknowledging the effort even when the outcome isn't perfect.
Exactly. This reinforces the idea that growth comes from the journey itself,
Yeah,
not just the destination.
that makes sense. What else can we do to actively overcome failure once it happens?
Once you've allowed yourself to process the initial emotions, and it's important to acknowledge those,
Not suppress them.
right, not suppress them, and you've started to reflect on what happened. The next crucial step is to develop a concrete plan for moving forward.
A plan.
Yeah, and this involves setting small, manageable goals based on the lessons you've learned.
Okay.
Don't try to fix everything at once.
Right.
Identify one or two key areas where you can make adjustments and focus your energy there.
So it's about taking those broad lessons and turning them into specific actionable steps.
Exactly.
Instead of saying, I need to be more organized, it's breaking that down into smaller tasks, like I'm going to start using a calendar to track deadlines.
Exactly. And as you work towards these smaller goals,
Yeah.
it's vital to acknowledge and celebrate your progress, no matter how incremental it may seem.
Incremental.
Yeah, this builds momentum and reinforces positive behavior. It also helps to counteract those negative feelings associated with the initial setback.
That makes sense. It's about creating a sense of forward movement and building confidence again.
Exactly.
What about reaching out to others?
Seeking support and constructive feedback from trusted individuals can be incredibly valuable.
Okay.
This could be mentors, coaches, colleagues, or even friends and family who have faced similar challenges.
Right.
Talking about your experience can provide emotional support.
Yeah.
And getting an outside perspective can offer fresh insights and identify blind spots you might have.
The key word there is constructive feedback. It's about finding people who can offer honest insights and help you see things from a different angle,
Right.
not just offer platitudes.
Exactly. Look for individuals who are willing to ask thoughtful questions and provide specific examples.
Good advice.
Feedback is a gift that can help you refine your approach and accelerate your learning.
A gift. I like that.
And finally, and perhaps most critically, is the element of perseverance.
That resilience, that refusal to give up.
Exactly. Failure can be deeply discouraging.
It can.
And there will be moments when you just feel like throwing in the towel.
Yeah.
But it's in those moments that your commitment to your goals is truly tested.
Yes.
As Winston Churchill famously said, success is not, final failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts.
Wow.
Every setback, no matter how significant it appears, is simply another data point on your journey, provided you maintain the courage to keep moving forward.
That's such a powerful message. It's a reminder that the journey isn't always linear.
Right.
And those stumbles don't have to define the final outcome.
They don't.
Now, we've talked about the theory behind all of this.
Right.
But it's always so impactful to see how these principles play out in the real world.
Absolutely.
We mentioned Michael Jordan earlier.
Yeah.
Are there other well-known figures who've faced significant failures on their path to success?
Oh, absolutely. History is replete with examples.
Okay, let's hear some.
Consider Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, okay.
He was famously forced out of Apple, the company he co-founded.
Wow.
Imagine the feeling of that kind of public and professional setback.
Yeah.
Yet he returned years later and revolutionized the tech industry again.
He did.
That's a testament to his ability to learn, adapt, and persevere after what must have felt like a monumental failure.
That comeback story is incredible.
Yeah.
It really highlights the idea that even being knocked down in a major way doesn't mean it's game over.
It doesn't. Another compelling example is J.K. Rowling,
J.K. Rowling.
the author of the Harry Potter series.
Right.
Before achieving phenomenal success, she faced numerous rejections from publishers. Oh yeah. She was a single mother facing financial hardship and dealing with personal struggles while writing the first book.
Wow.
Each rejection could have been a reason to give up, but she persisted.
And thank goodness she did. It's hard to imagine the Harry Potter books not existing.
I know, right?
It really underscores the importance of believing in your vision, even when others don't initially see it.
It does. And then there's Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah, okay.
Early in her career as a news anchor, she was told she wasn't fit for television.
Wow, you're kidding?
Nope, she was even demoted.
Oh my gosh.
That kind of feedback could be incredibly disheartening.
It would be for me.
Yet she went on to build a media empire and become one of the most influential figures globally.
She really is an icon.
These examples demonstrate that setbacks are not necessarily indicators of future failure.
Right.
They can actually be springboards to even greater achievements
I see.
if you approach them with the right mindset.
So those stories are truly inspiring. They really drive home the point that failure isn't a dead end, but often a detour that can lead to something even better.
Exactly. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah, okay.
what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to remember about failure?
Well, I think the most crucial message is to reframe your relationship with failure. See it not as an insurmountable obstacle,
Right.
but as an inevitable and invaluable part of the learning and growth process.
I like that.
Every time you stumble, you have the opportunity to gain insights, refine your approach, and ultimately become more resilient and more capable.
So failure isn't a final verdict.
Yeah.
It's really just data feedback that can guide us on our journey towards our goals.
Exactly. By embracing a growth mindset, actively seeking the lessons within your setbacks, and cultivating perseverance,
Yeah.
you unlock your potential for continuous improvement and achievement.
You do remember that many of the most remarkable success stories are built upon a foundation of lessons learned from prior failures.
So here's something for you to think about out there listening.
Okay.
Consider a time you experience a significant failure. Instead of focusing on the negative emotions, try to identify the key lessons you learned from that experience.
Good idea.
What did it teach you about yourself?
Yeah,
about your approach, about the situation.
I like it.
And more importantly, what's one small step you can take now informed by that learning?
Powerful.
Don't let past setbacks hold you captive.
Yo.
See them as the launching pad for your next endeavor.
That's a great challenge. And to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Often the most profound and meaningful successes blossom from the seeds of our most challenging failures.
Wow.
It's a connection that's worth reflecting on.
It really is. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks.
And we'll see you next time.